You sure you want to talk about this?
I have to, Two Dog Mop. If I don't, it will stay in my mind for a long, long time.
I only ask because the last time you delved into this topic, you kind of...
I know, Two Dog Mob, but for some reason this show in particular keeps coming back to my mind. I think I need to talk about this.
I'll get the funerals paid for in advance.
Alright, let's get this out of the way. Cross Ange, Rondo of Angel and Dragon. As I talked about this before, this is mostly me just giving my own summary on the show as is, though I will do some comparisons to Ruby now and then. And I mean stayed. I've seen lots of bad things in my life, but this is the first time something keeps coming back into my mind, becoming more aggravating and becoming worse with every time it does. But why is that? Well, let me start with the beginning. The series takes place in a world where humans have evolved to the point where they can use a power called mana, an energy that has allowed peace and prosperity to rule over hate and prejudice. Or so it seems. Those unable to use mana, known as Normas, are seen as monsters and exiled from the rest of society as they are seen as threats to this perceived utopia. The series follows Angeles, the next in line to become a queen of her home nation of Misarugi, who has everything anyone could want: friends, wealth, family, power, and the love of everyone. That is, until it is revealed by her older brother that she is in fact a Norma.
What a twist!
Exiled from society to the island of Arsenal, she is stripped of her human rights, status as a princess, renamed Ange, and forcibly conscripted into military service along with other Norma to fight otherworldly beings known as dragons, spelt in all caps because they thought it'd be cool. And so the series follows Ange's now crazy life as she struggles to adapt to her new identity, while wishing to avenge all the wrongs done to her and her fellow Norma and destroy the world that stole their futures, all while learning that there may be more to her world and mana itself.
Now, that doesn't sound like it's too bad of a story, and it's not. It does sound like something that does have the potential of being an interesting and even gripping show that can talk about a lot of different themes like identity, prejudice, slavery, and so on, without being all SJW and stuff.
But that's not what it does. It has a lot of things that are definitely worth talking about, like rape, murder, violence, death, implied incest, and so on. But whenever it brings these things up, it never really has any purpose. It's literally there just to make the show edgier, and when it acknowledges those things later on, it's usually as the butt of a joke.
言ってわからないなら体に教え込むしかないね。お前も不満だったんだろ？偽善まみれのあの薄っぺらい世界が。違います。やめて。ご飯はまずいし、部屋は汚いし、ファーストキス奪われるし、もうなんで私ばっかりこんな目に？
Yes, that is what it does with those dark tones. It uses them for jokes and to be edgy. And that's another issue I have with this show. The tone is all over the place. It tries to be so many things at once. An action-adventure, a slice of life, a drama, a mystery, an erotica, etc., etc.
It wouldn't be so bad if a lot of these tones didn't clash with each other. The best comparison I can make is if the writers of Berserk suddenly started trying to throw in the aspects of other works, like the slice of life aspect of Azumanga Daioh, the episodic adventures of Going Wild, the adventure of Pokemon, the mystery of Seven, and the fan service of Monster Musume. You can have a combination of any two aspects, but altogether they do not mix.
It can't decide what it wants to be. It tries to be really dark, tragic, and mean-spirited like Game of Thrones, but also tries to have a slice-of-life feeling to it and tries to be a comedy following the misadventures of these characters. And I'll just say it now, I don't think a story about slaves on a prison island is something that really works with slice of life. Yeah, what next? An adventure movie about the Underground Railroad done by National Lampoon? It just creates a feeling that the show itself isn't welcoming to newcomers or really that appealing to longtime anime fanatics. It can't be a proper slice of life as the whole scenario and situation all these characters are in just simply doesn't lend itself to that. It also can't be a comedy because the stuff it shows and the way it handles it cannot translate into jokes. It also can't be a proper story-driven show as a lot of the fight scenes and episodes are mostly filler, and just waste runtime that could be used to tell a story or fix a lot of the tonal problems. But no, they just use the runtime for either pointless action scenes that go nowhere or just lots and lots of fan service.
Oh my god, on this mighty earth, that's another problem with this show, and it's a very consistent one. Almost every second of this crap heap tries to either have a character get naked, be stripped down, get violated, get raped, have sex, wear skimpy outfits, or show off their butts and boobs. Or have them at the end of some kind of sex joke at their own expense, and so much more.
From entire episodes dedicated to characters of all ages wearing nothing but bikinis and doing egg races but using their boobs instead of spoons, to just showing off their wiggling asses and then pissing their pants during grave battle scenes where people are viciously torn apart. It is unbearable! I remember saying something about this in my last video about Cross-Ange. What did I say again? At least with Ruby, you don't have Yang and Blake going hot and hearty with each other, while Ruby and White strip down to their skivvies. Oh yeah, that! So already you've got a good premise that has a lot of bad priorities. But there's a lot more to this train wreck than that, my friends. As for the world it takes place in, it's honestly really bland. Despite being told there are multiple nations and countries with different cultures, we just stay on this damn island or the islands around it in this boring ass prison base. And when we do leave the island, it's just the same locations we already know, or the new locations look and feel exactly like previous ones. In total, the major locations we get to see are around 3, and it keeps going back to these places no matter how much you want to see the rest of the world. So I hope you like bland, drab locations, because that's all you're going to get.
Now, as we said before in the last video, even though the newer volumes are definitely nowhere near the height of the first 3, but at least with Ruby, we're getting out of Beacon and Vale and exploring the world. We've seen tundras, snowy wilderness, villages, ruined cities, advanced utopias, city-sized slums, rural homesteads, lands of darkness, small towns, bandit camps, underground tunnel systems, and so much more.
I can admit it's not handled the best at every moment, but at least we aren't stuck at the same old school with only 2 locations to go to every once in a while. Heck, even that's not a fair comparison as Vale is a large city with many different locations and districts. Arsenal is a pathetic stack of rocks in the middle of the slagging ocean. Once you see Arsenal, Mitsurugi, and the Dragon World inside and out, you've seen it all. But that's nothing compared to the biggest issue I have with this show.
Which is?
The villain.
Oh.
I don't like how they treat the main villain. We have 2 villains actually, one for each half of the show. First we have Julio, Ange's older brother who is basically the catalyst for this entire damn thing. They set him up really well to be the final hurdle for Ange to defeat, almost to the point of it being comparable to Luke and Vader, as he is everything Ange now stands against and what she could have ended up as. So, what do? They kill him off halfway through the show in a not-so-climactic battle and replace him with an entirely new character introduced only 2 episodes prior? Yes, the villain that they built up as Ange's rival was cannon fodder and is subsequently replaced by Embryo.
Which, to be fair, is the most original villain name we've heard of in a long time.
My issue with Embryo is that, at least with Julio, he is connected to the main character. If it weren't for him, both of Ange's parents would still be alive. Her sister, friends, and her nation would still love and accept her and not treat her as a scapegoat for every little problem they have, and she'd still have her human rights and name and a right to the throne. He is literally the catalyst for every bad thing that's happened to Ange and has happened to her since. Embryo is just there to be a world-ending threat.
And yes, we know a world-ending threat needs to be stopped and all, but with no real connections or parallels between the two, them being rivals does not work, and the only reasons why they should fight is because Ange is the main character of the show.
Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader are prime examples of why connections like what Ange and Julio have work. Luke is the chosen one. He is there to bring balance to the Force and free the galaxy, while Vader, his father, is there to show us what Luke could end up as and how his journey could go a very different way. Something the prequel trilogy made very clear. If Darth Vader was just another evil warlord, their conflict with each other wouldn't have nearly as much meaning or work nearly as well.
He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
And going with the theme of the last video, the same is true with Team Ruby in Salem. For the first few volumes she's introduced in, she is just another world-ending threat to be stopped. But at the end of Volume 7, this is revealed.
Your mother said those words to me.
I won't pretend this is the greatest twist ever, but with that one scene, she now has some sort of connection with all of the main cast of characters in some way. If it weren't for Salem wanting to control humanity, Ozpin would have never helped found Beacon or the other academies. If it weren't for the academies, Team Stark would have never been formed. If Team Stark never formed, Yang and Ruby could have never been born. If it weren't for Salem's part in Summer's death, Yang would have most likely never learned of her real mother and sought to go after her. And if it weren't for the fact that her family before her were huntsmen, Ruby would have most likely never aspired to be a huntress and never went to Beacon or unlocked the power of the Silver Eyes.
There's so many more things we can list, but our point is, unlike Embryo, everything that is compelled or happened to a character or characters can all be directly traced back to Salem in some way. Embryo, the only thing that ties him to the characters is that the Norma exists outside of his plans and threatens to unravel them. Heck, the fucking dog that lives on the island with them has more of a reason to fight Embryo than Ange does.
Speaking of characters, a lot of the characters are really unlikable, and I mean really unlikable. They are either bland and one-dimensional,
Which, we will admit, are the best characters in the show, sadly.
while the rest are some of the worst kinds of people you can meet. They are cruel, they are perverted, they are bitchy, they almost always manipulate or backstab others for their own gain or selfish reasons, and any development they have mostly feels like it happens because it needs to, not because it's the character themselves that's growing. Ange is a good example of this, as she pretty much falls into every one of those categories I mentioned. For a good chunk of the series, she's mostly just whiny and puts herself above everyone else, even though she is now on the same level as they are, and is just a chore to sit through. And I do know she learns to be more open to these people and treat them as friends over time, but that's another issue I have. With the exception of people like Vivian, there's no reason for her to be friendly with anyone else. They either hate her, bully her, and heck, the episode where she does decide to be more open to her new team, having learned this valuable lesson, is literally preceded by an episode where some of those teammates rig her little flying fighting robot to malfunction to try and kill her. And then later on, she not only becomes friends with the person who rigged her robot to malfunction, but even somewhat become lovers with them as well, even going behind her boyfriend's back and making out with her. That may seem shallow of her, but remember, this is the character who tortured her boyfriend for being strapped down and stripped by the dragons in human form, just to see how humanoid reproduction works against his will. So remember, kiddies, if you are forcibly violated against your will, you deserve to have this happen. But going behind your loved one's back is perfectly fine.
In short, she definitely grows as a character, as she is definitely not the same girl we first meet. But like we said, it mostly feels like it happened because it needed to happen, not because she wanted to change.
Another good example is Jill, the commander of Arsenal. She is supposed to be this harsh individual that only wants what's best for the Norma, but has since been consumed by revenge. But she does not come off as that. She comes off as this really abusive person who only cares for her own goals and only wishes to mold Ange into another her and use Ange as a tool to unlock the Paramale's power and destroy the bad guy. So yes, any kind of moment of kindness or approval she gives Ange is about the same as you training a dog. At first I thought she was supposed to be the kind of character we aren't supposed to like, but no, we're good people deep within. She has a backstory that almost mirrors Ange's, is trusted by a lot of people, spared those who treated her poorly and welcomes them as equals, and even sacrifices her life by show's end to try and kill Embryo. But aside from flashbacks and being told that she is a good person at heart, we rarely ever see that. We're only told that in any time we could be shown that. The time is dedicated for more jokes about Tusk falling face first into Ange's crotch, which, yes, is a running joke. So yeah, Jill is a character that we are supposed to like, even though the scenes that say that are pretty much drowned out by the scenes that really say otherwise. It really says a lot when my favorite moment with her is the part where Ange hits her so hard she's left on the ground bleeding, unable to get up.
That sums up the show pretty well. Left on the ground bleeding when all things were said and done.
Speaking of story, that's an issue that appears commonly. It doesn't feel like the show planned anything out and mostly feels like they throw new things in because they can't figure out how to progress the story. Like until episode 11, there was no indication that the dragons were actually humans from another Earth and the world of Mana is a second Earth that humans escaped to long ago. It feels like that, along with Embryo and plenty of other things, were thrown in there because they had no idea on how to continue the story once Ange declares she wants to watch the world and its mana burn, despite clearly having a story path laid out with what I just said.
Fish Mob, we need to address the elephant in the room. Let's talk about the ending.
Why?
Because there isn't one.
Yup, you're right. We should talk about it. If you're wondering what Dog Mob is saying, Embryo's goal was to create a world where there was no war or conflict after the true Earth, the Dragon's world, is left almost uninhabitable by a great world war. By controlling all of existence and influencing the people like a god would, unifying them with an artificial energy called mana, which he gains by going to the true Earth and kidnapping what is basically the dragon's god and using her as a power source to produce mana. But the dragon's god cannot keep producing the amount of energy needed to keep mana going, so they begin opening these singularities with intent on drawing male dragons in to collect a substance inside them called draconium that can be used to give Aura enough power to keep the world's mana going. However, certain dragon classes have the ability to entrance humans just simply by roaring at them, and thus makes harvesting them very tricky, and thus risk exposing the truths that Embryo and the other world leaders worked hard to hide. That's where the Norma come in. Because they can't use mana, the Norma are immune to the entrancing effects of the dragons. So they decide to keep up this facade by programming all Mana users to automatically hate Norma so they can make an excuse to isolate all Norma from society, teach them that dragons are nothing more than beasts that need to be killed, and have them fight the dragons so they can secretly harvest the Draconium so they can make sure the dragon's god can keep providing the world of Mana its mana.
Hope you got all that because the show expects you to.
Moving on, the final episodes of the series has Embryo realizing his plan to make a utopia is falling apart, with a recent, pretty much successful attack on Arsenal by the dragons who have now upped their game, the Norma being revealed to hold on to a paramale that can access a power that rivals Embryo's, and an entire Mana fleet being decimated by one Norma not really helping his case. Deciding there is no other choice, he takes all of the world's mana to merge both the true and false Earths into one, causing mass havoc worldwide and leaving all to die in the subsequent birth of this new world. To save both worlds, our favorite characters fight and eventually defeat Embryo, thus liberating time and space from his control and stopping the merger. While the world of Mana is left in ruins and the survivors are left to figure out their own fate, all those who fought against Embryo are returned to the true Earth, aka the Dragon World, where they all decide to build a new nation where everyone, human, dragon, and Norma are truly equal and can choose their own path in life. And roll the credits. That's how it ends. I know I should probably be glad it's over, but the reason I take issue with this is that after all that Lord of the Rings level lore given to us in such little time, after all that stuff going on, after suffering through so many horrible moments, we don't even get a proper send-off for these characters that we're supposed to like. They're just like, we're free now. Screw the old world. We have no reason to help them. Let's just focus on our own future. Yeah! High flying adventures! We don't even get a true epilogue to show us where they are now and reflect on where they started. It's just still images overlaid behind the credits. No dialogue, no narration, nothing. Even the final clip of Ange flying in the sky of this new world, finally free, having reclaimed her future and everything she was always promised, and just being happy to be surrounded by the comrades she's come to know as friends and family, is just apart from the opening credits. They don't even overlay the new nation they'll eventually build below them, like how they occasionally change out the paramales Ange is flying. They're just flying over the same open oceans they always fought over. Even though in the last video I said I like that the ending does fit the story of the world it's set in, it ultimately just feels shallow and not like a proper send-off at all. Like they just wanted to get it done with.
Maybe they were hoping for a season 2, but given how the show turned out, I'm not surprised it never got one. If that is the case, that is.
And I know that some might say, well, what if they were only allowed 25 episodes and because of that they couldn't do a proper epilogue? No! School Live, Angel Beats, Lost Song, Gargantia, Anowana, and others like it had far fewer episodes than this show did, and they still had a proper epilogue, even if most of those epilogues couldn't be a standalone episode. The only reason I feel as though they didn't do this here is because they'd rather use that time they have for pointless fight scenes, useless characters, and lots of fan service. I kid you not, remove like half of the scenes involving some kind of fan service, you'd actually have time for like 1 or 2 more episodes, if not more. And that's excluding the completely pointless filler episodes that only justify its existence by having a 10 or 15 second scene setting up the episode that'll come after it.
So, it's just a poorly planned out show with bad priorities which cares very little about its, well, story and characters? It doesn't sound too different from the bad stuff we normally get. Why is it something you hate this much?
Well, you see, what elevates Cross Ange beyond the normal level of bad is that it has a certain mindset to it. It believes it's a deep, meaningful look at what being human truly means and what suffering, hardship, and true human bond is, even though all it does is just show off as much skin as possible, be as shocking as possible, and try and stir up as much controversy as possible because it has no other legs to stand on. That is what makes it automatically one of, if not the worst things I have ever seen in my life. Say what you will about Garbage Pail Kids, at least it knows it's trash, no pun intended, and they don't pretend to be anything deeper. Say what you will about Michael Bay's Transformer movies, they know they're trash, and at least they don't pretend to be anything more. Heck, say what you will about Dragon Ball Evolution, Last Airbender, any knockoff or sci-fi channel movie, Twinkle Nora Rock Me, Bubsy 3D, or whatever else you want. All those things know they are trash and have nothing important to say, and none of those things pretend to be otherwise.
Hey, maybe we should wrap this up by maybe talking about some things you like about the show?
You're right. This video has been quite negative, hasn't it? Well then, to be fair, there are some things I do like. Some of the visuals look nice, the animation is pretty good for the most part, there are some genuinely nice moments now and then. I do like the growth that the character Emma Bronson goes through, as it feels like this is how she, as a character, would grow. I do like the declaration Ange makes to Embryo before he dies, and I will admit I have some of the soundtracks on my iPod right now. But other than that, there's no real mystery as to why this franchise disappeared as quickly as it came. If it can be called a franchise in the first place. It's an unreasonably mean-spirited show with a lot of clashing tones, heavy reliance on fan service and shock value, unlikable characters and bland environments, all while it takes none of the issues it brings up seriously and will even just copy stuff from similar shows.
In other words, it's just a fucking mess that's pretending to be high art.
No, I have a better word. It's just shallow. It's a shallow, hypocritical show that pretends to have something important to say. If you want anything Cross-Ange offers, there's honestly better choices out there. Giant robots, slice of life, comedy, drama, fan service, action, deep and meaningful messages. There's just better options for all these in general, without having to throw them all together in some kind of unholy melting pot. Now, this is just my silly little opinion. If you enjoy the show, that's perfectly fine, more power to you. But for me and anyone else that might be interested, I can safely say this is one piece of dragon shit best left under the radar.
So, you good?
Yes, I am good. You know, I think this whole experience has honestly made me grateful. I am grateful that the worst things I've seen up to this point have only been normally bad stuff. This is probably the first time, excluding Brinkado of course, I have seen what a truly bad product is in its purest form. And now I am grateful for that. I know what I like, and I now know what is garbage a lot better because of this train wreck.
Glad to hear it.
But I'm still blowing up the planet anyway.
What?
Well, come on, my viewers are expecting it. Might as well not disappoint them, right? Hey, where are you going?
Far away from this death trap.
Well, I'm one fish mop, and this is for you, my faithful viewers.